Hello, welcome everyone to our uh, first webinar of ATAP AT3 Center's 2026 webinar series, AI and AAC. Is it going to be Star Trek or Blade Runner? Uh, we anticipate having a webinar on this. I know this is Thursday and not Wednesday, but the first Wednesday of each month. Our next webinar is scheduled for December 3rd. And the subject is what is Access Navigator? So we hope to see more of you there as well. But with that, again, we'll welcome everybody, and I will turn the time over to Angela and Shannon to share their presentation with us. Thank you.
Thank you. And all the people are admitted, Jamie?
Yes, they are.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. So probably many of you know us already, but just in case not, I am Angela Standridge, the director of the Texas Technology Access Program, and my cohort presenting with me today is Shannon Page, another employee at TTAP, and we are the AT program in Texas. So I won't spend too much more time on that. This is going to be an introductory course to AI. I found when I went and talked to practitioners that were supporting assistive technology and specifically AAC that people did not know what AI was. They were very anxious about AI. They were sort of maybe afraid of it a bit. So I kind of created this overview. The first part of it is an overview of AI in general, and the second half is AAC specific issues and concerns. So we're going to talk about first, what is this magical, crazy AI stuff? We're going to talk about the good things, the bad things, and the ugly things with AI, because there are all three. And then we will dive into AI and AAC, and we've got some references and resources for you at the end. Feel free to type questions in the chat while I'm talking. Shannon will watch the chat, and when she's talking, I'll watch the chat, and we'll try to answer in the uh, in the event, and then we'll probably save a little time at the end for questions as well. So on the screen is a picture of HAL, who is the computer from Space Odyssey 2001. And HAL was an AI-based computer robot entity who had an existential crisis because he had a conflict in programming. So he was told to always be truthful and honest to the humans, and at the same time to make sure he did not compromise the mission. And the mission was to find these monoliths on Jupiter. And so the problem was that the humans figured out what was going on, and his solution was he had to kill the humans because then he wouldn't have to lie to them if they were dead. So obviously that was not a great solution. And I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't read it, but Hal had a bad day. At any rate, though, uh, so that's kind of an example of AI gone bad. So we're gonna delve a little deeper into all of that. So what is this magical AI stuff? There are two images on the screen. One is a silver origami unicorn. This is from the movie Blade Runner. In the movie, one of the characters, every time he is in a location, he folds a little silver origami unicorn and leaves it on the ground, and that's kind of the evidence that he had been there. And then the other picture on the screen is the USS Enterprise. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge science fiction nerd, so of course I had to pick analogies that went with science fiction. So we did a similar version of this recently. At the end, they asked me a question whether I decided it was Star Trek or Blade Runner, and I haven't really decided yet. So we'll see what you think after we share everything with you. So some thoughts to frame our discussion today. First of all, it is not just language models. Language models are this much, little teeny tiny bit of AI. It's just kind of scratching the surface. It's what everybody knows about. It's what's in the news now. It's what everybody's beginning to experiment with, but it's not all of it. In fact, it's a little bitty piece of it. All open AI models are biased, and many closed AI models are biased because those models are based on the data that currently exists in our world, and our world is quite biased. So I always have a somewhat of a sort of a joke that whenever you do an AI query, it sounds a little bit like a 40-year-old white guy answered the question for you, because that tends to be the bias in our culture. What about also the ethical, authentic, and factual AI? So you'll hear a lot about hallucinations and AI returning information that is absolutely incorrect or just made up. So how do you know? How can you ferret out what's truthful and what's not? And then how are you sure that everyone using AI is using it in an appropriate and ethical manner? Um, you have to remember not all humans are ethical, so you're going to have some breakdowns there because they may not apply it in an ethical way. And then what about AI and AT and augmentative communication? And then everybody is concerned, am I behind the curve? Do I not know enough? Should I be doing more? I don't want to do AI. It's scary. Or there's this whole set of anxieties connected to that. Even people that are playing with AI think maybe they're not doing it right, or they're not doing it enough, or they should do it only in this sector, or should do it in many sectors. So there's a lot of confusion about all that. This picture on this slide depicts kind of a little cloud, an AI cloud with some little lightning bolts coming out of it. And each of those bolts are going to different types of AI. So large language models, image generators, robots, productivity tools, voice assistants, video generators, and audio generators. Those still not all the types of AI that you might encounter, but those are the ones that are most likely to be part of the world of AAC. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So AI is just zeros and ones. It cannot think yet. It does specific finite tasks. It just does it very fast, typically faster than a human could do it. It's going to look for patterns based on its data snapshot and make a prediction. Now, the thing with that snapshot, so where does your AI engine get its data for whatever you're doing? Sometimes that is not transparent. So some entities use open source data. Some entities take a snapshot in time and they use data from like that year, that entity. They go out to the internet and they take a picture isn't a complete analogy for what it is, but they take a look at everything that's out there, all the letters, words, everything, and they translate every single thing into zeros and ones, and they put it in a big database. And then when I go in and I do a query, I'm pulling from this giant database of information that was grabbed from November 6th, 2023, and that's what that particular data engine is using. Some data engines are proprietary and you don't know where it came from. Some are narrow, like for example, in the world of medical diagnoses, they'll only be looking at information about that particular type of medical diagnosis they're working with, like cancer research, for example. Um, so that's a little gray. And when you don't know what that data is, that can affect what your outcomes are going to be. So that to me is a little bit of a gray area that might be a little on the creepy side, I think. It can get it very wrong. And again, it's not just the chatbots. It's much, much more than that. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about what is it then, if it's not just chatbots, what actually is AI. So there's going to be some basic definitions. Uh, Again, on the screen, there's an image of the silver origami unicorn and the Starship Enterprise. So AI definitions number one, artificial narrow intelligence, also called ANI, and also called weak AI, weak as in not strong, WEAK, weak AI. This is where we are right now. This is the only place we are right now. So what is weak AI or artificial narrow intelligence? That includes natural language processors. So those large language models, those fall in this category. It includes something called neural network algorithms, which sounds really sci-fi-ish, but really they picked the term neural network just as an analogy. It's just algorithms, but they use the neural network idea to sort of give you the idea that it's working like a human brain, but there is no neurology connected to it. They're just using that as an analogy to describe what is happening when it's working through the data. Some examples of ANI are virtual assistants and chatbots. So, I can have an agent go into my email and search for certain types of emails and summarize them for me. That would be an example of a virtual assistant, artificial narrow intelligence. That's where we are currently. AI definitions number two. This is theoretical. Theoretical means we're thinking about it. It's probably going to happen in the very near or very medium future, but it is not here yet. That includes Artificial general intelligence, also called AGI, and that's when AI will be able to learn, think, and perform human level tasks. Everybody thinks AI is here. It's not here yet. That's where it is in the movies. It's not here on your laptop or in your phone yet. Some examples might be supercomputers, quantum technologies, next level robotics, and sophisticated generative AI. But we're not there yet. We're only on that artificial narrow intelligence. AI definitions three, artificial superintelligence, also called ASI, also called super AI. This is science fiction. This does not exist. Now, I am a science fiction fan. Science fiction almost always eventually becomes science fact in some variation. Will this happen in my lifetime? This real gray hair, probably not. If you're a little younger, maybe. I don't know. This would be self-aware AI. It's probably going to be better than humans, but maybe not, because it's science fiction. We don't know. I put some examples up here of some books that take some different views on this. So if you're kind of like, well, I wonder what it could be, I really want to think about that more, you might explore some of these. So I, Robot by Asimov was probably one of the first books to go here. And that was probably one of the first books that explored self-aware AI and sort of robot rights, so to speak. 2001 Space Odyssey, I have already referred to. Clara and the Sun, I included because it is a story about a family that gets a robot for a young girl who has a disability, and it's the story from the robot's perspective. So it's a not all stories are from the perspective of the AI. The Culture series is by Ian Banks. He's a Scottish author, and it's not it's there must be 50 or 60 books in the series. You don't have to read them in order. They're just a collection of stories in the same universe. And in this example, AI is entities that exist in the cosmos, and they find us, they find Earth, and we engage them. And there's a continuum of AI in these beings, from very, very super intelligent AI to, I guess, what I would call dumb AI or weak AI. And how humans and the AI engage is no, some of the books are more positive, some are more negative, some are they're a little flavor of everything. So that might be something you want to get into and try. And then Do Androids Dream Electric Sheep is the book that Bladerunner was built on. And the book is actually a little bit different than the movie, so you might want to take a look at that as well. And in that one, that's sort of another um, Android AI awareness, AI rights kind of story as well. So that was the types of AI. Now we're going to talk about how they classify AI that currently exists. So you can have reactive machines. We are here that responds to input but does not learn or store memory. So that would be examples of like recommendation engines. Like if I go into Netflix and I log into my account, it looks at everything I've ever watched, and it's going to suggest all these science fiction anime things for me to watch because that's what I always watch. I can also go into if I'm in a new town and I want to say best restaurants with Indian food that isn't too spicy. That's another recommendation engine example. And then Deep Blue, which is a chess robot, which was somewhat recently kind of famous because he beat a human. So then everybody was afraid we were back at that AI point of singularity, and we're not really there yet. So he did learn a little bit. He didn't, not quite that much. And then limited memory AI, we are also here. That's where the AI can store past data to make predictions, and that's called deep learning. Chatbots do that, and thankfully also self-driving cars do. I live in Austin, and we have 4 self-driving companies beta testing in this town. So it's a little unnerving. You can recognize they're very clearly marked by vendor, and I just kind of wait for them to go by. I'm just not taking my chances. Oops, sorry about that. It didn't go forward. There we go. AI classifications too. So this next one is just theoretical. We're not there yet. We're almost there. Theory of mind AI, where they can interpret emotions and predict future actions, just like people. However, there is a huge margin of error here because AI is really, really, really bad at context. In fact, humans aren't stellar at context. Some humans are better, many humans are not so great at it. And if it's an environment you're not familiar with, you're even less successful at getting context. That is why we get so many hallucinations, because the AI can't grab that contextual subtlety. It's not there. And then that last one on this page is self-aware AI, or the point of singularity, where AI does become an entity. Again, that's science fiction and maybe philosophy if you want to go there, um, which we're not anywhere near that. That is not going to happen yet. We don't have the computing capacity or the hardware or maybe even the human capacity to wrap our heads around that. So we're not there yet, even though people may think we are. So a little bit about AI learning and processing. So all of this, all of AI is just machine learning. And I want to reiterate, it's just algorithms and probability. So whenever AI goes and does something, it goes and looks at all of its data, whatever that is. If I'm a chat bot looking for information, or if I'm a robot trying to figure out how to navigate a new environment, I'm looking at all of the information above me, in front of me, and I'm looking at the data I have collected, and then I'm going to make, well, probably this is the thing that should be said, or this is the way I want to go, or this is the action that should happen. It's just probability. It's all it is. Simple, simple math, really. So some examples of that: robots and self-driving cars. Um, they use reinforcement learning, and then there's two types of reinforcement learning: supervised and unsupervised. Well, I guess there's three kinds: semi-supervised, and that means human. How much level of human engagement is there with that AI? So a little scary thinking about unsupervised AI running amok, so that doesn't happen actually that often. Usually there's some kind of human engagement with that somewhere. And then there's that neural networks word again, which again is just a word that to give an example of how the engine is working, but there's not really any actual neural network, biological or mechanical or electronic. They just use that terminology for the concept. And then within machine learning, there's sort of two subtypes. Machine vision is the eye of the computer that is perceiving the environment that's out there. So it would be like with a self-driving car that uses cameras, radar, and LiDAR. LiDAR is like radar, but it's with lasers instead of radar, instead of radio waves. And cameras obviously use just light. And then computer vision is the thing that takes that image, that vision, and does something with it and thinks about it and makes a decision. So for an example of that would be facial recognition. So uh, we're not quite there yet, but probably eventually I'll go into work. The little thing will look at my face and decide if I get to walk in the door or not. Um, so that's them taking the machine vision, looking at me in the brain going, oh, yep, that's Angela. I can look at my collection of data and match that image to this picture I have of her. Now, if I went and radically changed my hair and put on new glasses and maybe put a lot of retinol on my face, maybe it wouldn't work as well. So it's not going to be able to just make that subtle contextual decision. And then expert systems are ones that are on narrow data sets like that cancer medical diagnosis that I gave you. Oh, that was weird. I didn't know it was going to do that. And then one more slide about just the vocabulary and the concepts of AI. So XR, which stands for extended reality, with the X in extended and the R in reality, is encompasses augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. So why is this even relevant to AI? Because of the marriage of these two technologies that is already happening and is going to exponentially happen even more. So augmented reality is when there are digital overlays on top of your existing perception. Virtual reality is when you're in a completely different world and the outside world is cut off. So you're in a video game or in a simulation of some kind. And then mixed reality is where they kind of mix them all together. So it could be any combination of the physical world and the virtual world in degrees of each one that may or may not be appropriate. So why is this relevant? Again, because our constituency, individuals with disabilities and those that are aging, this may be an avenue for them to engage and participate in the world that did not exist before, and AI is going to be part of that. So, maybe I'm a person who's older and I want to live independently and I want to cook in my house and I put on my XR glasses. And as I'm going through the ingredients, it'll show me how much of the butter do I cut off to put into the cookies to make, so I don't have to measure it. It'll just show me cut off 2 tablespoons, put that in there to mix it up to make the cookies. So that type of where it's showing me my real world, but then it's also telling me what to do, I think is going to be something that we may see available to our constituency and consumers. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. So in this image, we have a AI generated picture that is sort of accurate, but not really, because they sometimes are. It is a person with a visual impairment and a guide dog, and he has his white cane kind of tucked into the guide dog's harness. And the dog is walking. The man is standing in the middle of the street, and then people are actually walking in the middle of the street perpendicular to the way he's going. So it's that's not the way a street's ever going to look, and probably not the way it's going to look with a person with the visual impairment. But that's what AI thought would happen if you ask for those particular combinations of things. Now, it does make it easier to do many things, and we'll talk about some of the things that makes it easier in just a minute. So that is a positive thing. It can make it easier to manage your just your life in general, because we have so many things we deal with now. It can make your job easier. It can make management of appointments and your household easier. Um, so there's good things about it. There are also challenges. So one thing is ethical considerations, digital and data self-determination and sovereignty. So having ownership of my data and being able to decide what happens with it is going to be huge in the next decades. And quite honestly, there's not really a lot of regulation in place in this country to really monitor that or make it transparent. This is actually one of my biggest concerns. And that whole idea of digital sovereignty and self-determination, it scales up. So it starts at the individual level, and then it goes to your household level, and then it goes to your community level, and then it goes to your state level, and then it goes to your uh, you know, country level. And then there's even, entire regional parts of the world that are exercising or trying to exercise digital sovereignty, because more developed parts of the world are trying to hone in on those digital sovereignty of those less developed parts of the world. So it's very much a discussion in the AI world right now. And again, regulation is not really happening in the US. The tech pros are in charge and we're not, and they're winning. So I'm not sure what to do with that. As this then opens up the potential for abuse, misuse, harm, marginalization, and all of our constituents are already marginalized with their disability and aging labels. And if they have any other concomitant label of any kind or marginalization, it'll make them even more difficult for them, and they're potentially going to be exploited because of that. So that's a huge concern. Slide 2 of the good, bad, and the ugly has the same picture of the gentleman trying to get across the street. Authentic factual AI. So how do you know? AI can make hallucinations. It can just make up stuff that based on the probability of that data it's searching. So you have to do a little bit of common sense, like, does that make sense? And double check some sources. But you also have to make sure that when you utilize AI, whether it's going to be for work or for fun or for whatever, that you acknowledge that in, like, if I'm sharing something, I'm going to say, I created this picture with AI, or I generated this summary with AI. You want to be transparent when you're using those tools, so that if there is something that comes into question, people can say, hey, that doesn't quite sound right to me. Can we verify that or look someplace else? There is absolutely potential for nefarious actors to intentionally create fake content and generate that and spread it around. And I don't know that the average person maybe has the sophistication to question that. So that could be a big good, bad, and big bad and ugly thing. Um, The thing to know about AI, though, is it cannot apply logic or reasoning. It does not think. So it can't look at its return of whatever you requested and go, oh, that doesn't seem right. So it is up to you as the end user to make those decisions and go back and take a look at that and review it and check other sources, which may not make you feel much better. I know. So the good, bad, and the ugly, slide 3. So on this picture is a kind of a famous image of a query done. I'm so sorry, I forgot which AI engine it was. I could maybe look in my notes and find it. DALL-E, DALE 2 was the one they used. Uh, so they ask the engine to create an image of a cow being abducted by aliens with a 1960s art feel to it. So what the image actually comes out looking like is there's a small UFO on top of a extremely huge cow, like the size of a mountain cow. And then it's connected to like some kind of little radio box thing or something. And it doesn't even really look like the Midwest. It looks like Mars or something. So that would definitely be an example of a hallucination, which is why I chose it for this picture. So hallucinations happen because the AI data is biased. All models are biased. And anybody with aging, disability, or other marginalized populations, any of the ableisms or any of the isms are going to be at risk to be misrepresented because of that. And it has a hard time with that context. The other thing that's really ugly is copyright and ownership are still quite fuzzy. Um, they kind of keep finding the courts in the US are sort of leaning more toward the tech companies and less toward the creators of content, which is a little unnerving. So it's kind of the tech companies versus the government versus the masses, and I don't think anybody's winning in any of that actually, because if it becomes where people can't rely on the fact that their content is secure, people aren't going to share content. And so then you have, less engagement and it's a bad thing all around. So perhaps that's going to settle in the dust or something, but right now it's kind of a mess. Um, the other big ugly thing is to support AI, it takes a huge amount of space, energy, and water. So there are in Austin, I believe, 2 or 3 AI farms, server farms, and they basically they have these aluminum buildings for miles, maybe not miles, but it looks like it is, and they're ugly. And the one company, there's another company trying to bring one to Austin, and Austin is putting their foot down because we don't have any water in Central Texas, and if we had all those systems, it would literally take all the water the city would use if we had added one more AI system. So I'm not sure what we're going to do about all that as my water bill increases, right? So that is a big, big, big problem. And if you think about it, it's because it's all of that data that requires so much processing so fast. It's the speed and the volume of data that is being moved through the system. I did promise I'd talk about some helpful ways that AI is used. So you can use it with content creation, design, and refinement. If you have not taken on a document or an email or something and ask AI to clean it up or try to do this with it or make it sound more like this or sound more like that. Uh, Try it just to see what happens. It doesn't mean you have to keep it. I sometimes go back and put my wording back in it because I think I'm a bit more clever than the AI. The thing that it does do is it can put other perspectives on it. And a little bit about when you do a prompt in the world of search engines for the internet, we've learned to narrow it down to the most common denominator to get the best results. It is just the opposite in the world of AI. You want to give it more information than you possibly think it could need. The more information you give, the better your AI return will have. So whereas if I was going to search Google, I might want to put it in, 5 words or less. But if I want to create a prompt in Chat GPT or Gemini or Copilot, I'm going to look at a paragraph of information to really get what I want to have returned to me. Chatbots and large language models process information and generate ideas. That's fabulous. Otherwise, you might just be sitting there staring at your computer. If you're one of those people that gets stuck and can't get started, it can get you started. It will help you practice tasks, new learning, and simulations. And again, I think that virtual reality will take a really big leap with this too. So you can use it, we'll be able to use it for job training and, maybe I'm going to go to a brand new airport. I don't know what it looks like, and I can go test out what it looks like before I get there and not be lost and confused, for example. Productivity, task automation. You can make custom agents in AI to do a specific task. So I'll give you an example for the AT program folks here. Our process for ordering equipment is a big hot mess because we never know who asked for it and where it is in process and did it get ordered and did it come in. And so I'm working on creating an agent to automate that so that somebody can say, I want this. And then it comes to me and I say, I approve this. And then they can then go to our business manager, and the business manager can start anytime you buy anything at a university, it takes months and months and months. So she starts the months and months process, and then it finally comes in, and then she says, clicks the button and says, it's here. And then my device loan person knows, oh, I need to go get it and asset tag it. So that whole, and then finally the original staff person who requested device XYZ gets a little email that says, your whatever has been arrived and has been asset tagged and is in the loan closet now. And, you know, now it's kind of a little bit of a fuzzy thing when that happens, and that could be much more automated and productive, I think. And nobody's tracking people down the hallway going, where's my Tobii Dynavox or whatever. And then we're going to have robots, machines, and gadgets and smarter gadgets. And, well, we'll let robots, well, Shannon's going to talk more about robots. So I think, isn't this where I stop, Shannon? It is where I stop. Okay. All right. Shannon's up now.
All right, and full disclosure, I did not title this training. If you looked at my Netflix account, you're going to see all of the Disney princess movies and Spider-Man and Paw Patrol because I only watch TV with my grandchildren. So my worst fear is if something happened that I was locked in, somebody would say, oh, here's her Netflix choices. Let's give her 24 hours of Sleeping Beauty. Because that's what it would find. I like to be outdoors kayaking and fishing. But I do want to watch Bladerunner now because I want to see the origami horse and I like Harrison Ford. So I have reasons. We're choosing healthcare because a lot of our assistive technology falls in that domain of that healthcare realm. Both in the processes and procedures. And then we'll move into AAC because we see so much possibility in the applications for AAC. It's not there yet, but we think that it's going to be coming. In the field of medicine, AI has taken off in regards to starting in the beginning, like your med school students, just even in the training, you're seeing AI being used in such incredible ways. The surface level improvements start with procedures of moving those old med school student memorization tasks to some real problem-based learning through virtual reality. So when they're using their cadavers, they can actually see through virtual reality the parts on these cadavers moving and the pathologies based on that cadaver if it was alive and living and how the blood flows and things like that. So in regards to getting that firsthand training application, it's really a game changer. Then you move forward into the patient level where you have more effective information gathering. You have improved coordination of services because one physician can put their information in and you move to the next doctor and they can see that instantly because of the data system. If a physician sends a prescription out to the pharmacy and maybe there's a contraindication or a contraindicator, that can be flagged immediately. So you've got safety has improved with some of the AI. And then the imagery, like your images of x-rays and bone scans and your MRI data, that can we used to have to wait till your radiologist came. Well, now he can access it as soon as it's taken, and you can have that information practically in the minute. So the speed of that is all improving. We now have robots, so the surgeons can look at these images that they get almost immediately. And so if you are going in for heart surgery or a stent, they can actually look at the unique makeup of how your heart is placed within your body. And they do trials using virtual reality so that they know how the different veins and arteries align with the mass in your body, and they can work around it to improve when they actually go in there. So it's almost like they get a practice run, which they never got to do before. And so those are game changers, improving outcomes in the medical field. And then due to the large databases that they're now using and sharing, physicians can now identify rare conditions and pathologies like lesions that may be cancerous or tumors that may be cancerous based on the shapes and forms of it. And that has really improved. So it allows for the treatments to start earlier and improved outcomes because you've got that early intervention. So all of this healthcare is really starting to improve. We're going to go ahead and move to the next slide. I've got some caveats to medical also, but then you think about the tools at your fingertips, like your wearables. And so they're now using the wearables for blood pressure, glucose monitors. You have implanted technology like a pacemaker. And so a pacemaker now communicates with the cardiologist on a daily basis. And it's not like it's calling the doctor saying, hey, Dr. Edwards, this patient's pacemaker. It all goes through the computer database, and it will send warnings if there's abnormalities in the heartbeat so that that doctor or that physician's assistant can immediately call the patient, say, hey, you need to come in, we need to check your pacemaker, we need to do an update. So all of that happens behind the scenes, and that's your AI working. For sensory impairments, you have that wearable technology that improves, it goes beyond just what the hearing aid can do, and it can identify sounds in the backgrounds and safety monitors. You can identify environmental changes for an individual. There's glasses now that provide instant feedback for your vision impaired or individuals that are blind. And then Angela and I just saw some really cool shoes, and they provide proprioceptive feedback and help with balance or helping an individual with a disability with their walking. And then you take it to those wheelchairs where, if you think 20 years ago, when you had just we were so excited about the motorized wheelchairs, and now the motorized wheelchairs stand and lower and turn they're very heavy, but they can really keep the patient moving and their body positioned in better manners and work with the patient. So you've got all of this technology that can kind of monitor and move and help with diagnosis. And with all of this medical technology, then we also need to look at the other side of the coin, with the ability to diagnose earlier. The good thing is we have the potential to move from that sick care, which is kind of what our model is based on. You're sick, you go into the doctor, to really a more preventive care model. But will we? And that's where you and we need to start pushing legislature to get to more of that preventative care model so that we're preventing these illnesses. And well, then is there a cost? Will it be cost effective? Or are they going to use information to earn money by providing unnecessary tests to make a buck? And that's where we get to that, what's going to prevent or manage the potential for ill use of these tools? And then you go back to the wearables, will they be able to track risk-taking behaviors? So we already have that question on our health intake. Do you smoke? Or how many drinks do you have per day? I always want to say, about 34. But is there a possibility of misusing this technology? What if it, say I go skydiving, I always like to use that. I went skydiving and I've got a wearable heart monitor. Well, it increased my heart rate, which put me at risk for that heart attack. So now the insurance company's not going to cover it because I knew that I have this heart problem, but I engaged in risk-taking behaviors. So are we going to have any kind of insurance policy like that? Will it risk getting the proper care because of our behaviors? And then there's genetic risk factors. As we learn more about genetics, will you have a higher insurance cost because of your genetic makeup versus somebody else's who doesn't have that same genetic profile? Will more risk factors then lead to higher insurance? And so these are all things I think that we need to have conversations about. When you look at the physicians, we don't want physician skepticism then to also not pick up on using the tools, so that we're missing out on some of the better technology for diagnosis. Yet we don't want an over-reliance on the AI. And then what if there's a mistake, and who's going to cover that liability? And then, as Angela kind of talked about before, when you're looking at a database on these health conditions, are they biased to a specific race, gender, age, or genetic code? And will that impact the reliability for someone who doesn't fit that makeup? And so we've got a higher rate of white men in the healthcare system. And then if somebody comes like from an Aboriginal tribe and they come here for that medical care, are we going to be able to meet their needs if we don't have the correct makeup for that population? So we need more research on diverse populations. And then there's I want to go back to, if you think about airplanes, and I'm going to give you another analogy. We've had airplanes flying on autopilot for years and years and years. But we still mandate that a pilot is in that airplane, even though these planes are pretty much flying by themselves. And so we need to have that same oversight in the medical field. And I think it takes all of us starting to ask these questions. And we need to have those conversations right now about transparency. Where is the data coming from? How are they protecting our personal information? And then how are they limiting the possibility of gatekeeping needed services without the excessive increases in cost? And as Angela said, I think AI is amazing. I think it has great potential. But I think it's up to us as the consumers, just like anything else, to really start these conversations, both with our medical teams and with Congress, our representatives, et cetera, because it's not going away and the risk is there. So that's what I have about healthcare. And then my favorite topic as we move forward, next slide, is we've talked about the healthcare, but now we want to move into what this impact is on communication tools. And I go back to one more behind. You went ahead. Go back. Yeah. So I want to tell the story about when I first had my first AAC device. It was in 2002, and it was a Dynabox. And that device did not have the built-in camera. So for me to add the classmates' pictures onto that device, I had to take the picture. I got your schedule, Angela. That's because she wants to keep me on track, because she's using AI to say, Shannon, stay on track. That was my cue. Anyways, so when I used to have to import the students' classmates, I would have to use a separate digital camera, and they were big. I would have to take the pictures. Then I would have to download those onto my computer. Then I would have to reduce the pixels on every single picture because there wasn't the storage space on that device. And then I would have to upload them onto the device and one by one put them into my device and organize them. And it took a lot of time and patience to get all of that accomplished, but I thought it was really important for that little guy to go home and talk about his classmates. Around that same time, we had this new device that came out, and it was this little handheld device called an iPod. And the marketing phrase for that was you could carry 1,000 songs for $400 in your pocket. And before that, we had this thing called a Walkman. So you youngins aren't going to know that we used to have to carry 20 CDs and just keep switching out those CDs before that. So now you had this little device handheld that you could listen to all of this music. But what that device did was it showed that they were increasing the storage capabilities and they were providing longer battery life for these little devices. And then in 2007, you got the next big burst where we got the iPhone and you were starting to get the cameras embedded into the phone. And we were, because of that increased storage space, we were getting more apps. Gone were the flip phones. And now everybody went from the Palm Pilots to these really cool iPhones. And it took, I think, another probably a good 5 to 10 years after the iPad, where you really started to see the apps trickling into the AAC devices. And then you got your first apps, your Proloquo to go. And in the beginning, they weren't that good, but over time, they've all kind of worked together and built off of each other. So you've got some pretty incredible communication apps out there now. You have more natural sounding voices. You have better symbol storage, so you can have a lot of options for pulling up the pictures in an instant. And if you don't, you just take a picture and pop, it's there. But even with all of these improvements, the actual systems in and of themselves are not increasing the rate of these conversational exchanges. And I mean, slightly, but we're still leaving our AAC communicators behind in our natural conversation. So we've got a lot of potential for growth. And I think another thing that we all have to do is we all have to kind of be on board to push that technology comes to these augmentative communicators so that we can increase the speed of these communication exchanges. So let's go ahead and move forward. The barriers that we continue to see are the speed. It still takes a lot of time, even with the newer devices. If I looked at my student back in 2002 and his ability to select, speak, that hasn't changed with the new iPad, which is still select, speak. So you're still having to go through all of those layers. And that speed reduces opportunities and it reduces participation because of those missed opportunities. The usability still needs to improve. The interfaces are still not intuitive. We get calls all the time from parents saying, hey, this isn't working or that's not working. And so we're having to do some problem solving. Fortunately, many of the AAC device providers are putting really good videos and how-tos on their website. And those are things we need to keep demanding. The AAC tools still lack that context awareness. So even though we're carrying it around, they don't have that GPS signal telling them where they are, which is you look at the technology in our car or the technology on the app called Seeing AI and what they can do. And how are we going to get that embedded into our devices so that they're faster? The cost is still excessive. Communication, as we say, should be a right, and it's still a huge barrier, the cost of some of the higher tech devices that do move faster. Training is another issue. We can use a lot of the AI to help us train on better decision making and better assessments. The transferability of devices, we still have issues where if somebody's using one device, their information doesn't transfer to the next one, so they're having to start all over. And I think some of the AI could really help with those transitions. And just the limited personalization, I think you're seeing slow increments of improvement. But there's still a lot of generic voices out there and limited vocabulary options, especially if you are not a Western English speaker. And then the environmental and social barriers are still there. The social attitudes, noise in the environment can impact your communication, lighting on the devices. So there's a lot that still needs to be corrected. And then the biggest one is, and a lot of your AAC users are very concerned, is you're having conversations with every single person in their environment. So there's a lot of data that we don't want just running out being used to train the rest of the AI. So how are we maintaining the privacy of that data that you're using within your communication device? Go ahead and move to the next slide. So these are the tools that we have, and I think the biggest thing is they're all almost like separate tools within your device. And when you look at the interactivity of other devices, like everything that works together within your phone, why can't we put that into our AAC devices? You have modern cameras that do more than take pictures. They recognize objects. They read through the OCR. They identify environments. And so we know that Ken Hackbarth already had talked with some companies, and so there, and he's got an article which is included on our references. But they can use that camera, that GPS information, to help define or refine the vocabulary that you have access to, both on the people that you're talking to and the environment that you're in. So that environmental awareness is huge. The microphone can hear the sounds, and it has the potential to adapt based on the noise level in the environment, but yet we haven't included that within our AAC devices now. The memory is much better, but we need to have a system where it's almost like a partnership where the individual is growing with the system, using that AI to build on what the person knows, kind of like a seeing eye dog knows the individual they're working with. Our AAC devices have that potential through some of this AI to grow with the individual. So that if you're working with a 3-year-old, it's developing language with the 3-year-old. If you're working with a stroke patient, it knows to simplify that language so that they can actually communicate their own wants and needs and not just the choices that are provided. And then there's a lot we can do with this virtual reality where we can give people opportunities to practice using some of the conversational skills to train the AI that's embedded within the AAC. So this is all of the things that we want to see in the future for our AAC, because the tools are out there. We just need to advocate to get it into the hands of our AAC users. Go ahead and change the slides. So the improvements that we need based on all of those tools and features that we have, they need to be more integrated. They need to be adapted towards the user. We need to make sure it's personalized based on the individual's interests. It needs to be transferable so that anywhere that individual goes, they've got their communication with them. It needs to be secure. And it needs to be supported both through the training of the trainers and the training of the user. Move forward. And then, as Angela talked about before, the same AI concerns that we had earlier all fall within our AAC and AI concerns. We want to make sure, again, we'll reiterate that data and privacy. We want to make sure there's restricted access to our devices so that it's not just joining any internet and somebody has access to all of that information. We want to make sure that when they're using their devices, they're not targeted for advertisements and sales pitches. We want to watch for the biases of the information that it's providing to our individuals so that it's really related to their settings, their culture, their language, etc. We want to advocate for decreased costs and not rising costs. And then we do want government regulations for the AAC devices, not against them. So we want to make sure that we don't want to overregulate, but that we have built in the ability so that if somebody is in school, they are still using that device. And the smaller group user challenge, I consider one where, because it's less than 1% of the population that uses this AAC, we're often the last to get the attention, and yet communication is such a significant need for those individuals. So with that, moving forward, what should we do right now? I think everyone, you're here right now, you're learning about AI. We want to, in regards to AAC, we want to identify the concrete examples to help AAC users. And we really want to work together to develop simplified, accessible support and teach everyone what AAC is so that we improve it for all. And these are the resources. And we have about 5 minutes for questions.
So while everybody's, I don't know if they can raise hands or they're typing in the chat. I'm not sure, Jamie, what the protocol is on the webinar. But the OpenAI Academy is many classes and lessons for free. Anybody can watch recorded ones, and there's also real-time ones with instructors in the moment. And there's an AI for that, is a database of all the AI that's out there. So if you like, I want to find out if there's an AI to help me find books on science fiction AI stories. There's a bot. There's 3 really good ones for that, actually. But you can go to that database and find out if there's an AI engine to do the thing you want to do. The 100-year study for AI is it's not finished yet. It's in, I think, year 10 currently. It's pre-funded. And if you go there, you can they publish a report every 4 years, I believe, and you can read the previous reports, and it's very interesting to see how it's changed through the reports and who the committees are. They've changed the committee each time. It used to be a bunch of just scientific nerds, and now they've included scientists and teachers and philosophers and doctors and things like that. I'm sorry, Jamie, you came on. Were you going to add something?
No, I was going to answer your question in that you can conduct the Q&A however you would like, but I do see that there is a question in the chat.
Oh, yes. So, Ashley, there is quite a bit of AI seeping into our AAC systems. They are beginning to look at things, that part where Shannon talked about that personalization and customization in the moment. So you're seeing some pieces with that. You're also seeing some experiments with where an AI system will look at the way a person communicates and gather data from the way they communicate, and then in an AI chat generating environment, rather than having to put their words together word by word or sentence by sentence, they can look at the person's past communication and generate what that communication response might be. And then they can choose to speak that or not speak that. So I don't think that's quite there yet. I think Shannon put in the chat earlier that about 70% of the time AI is not quite right. So I wouldn't want to only be accurate 70% of the time, but that can reduce the speed with which, or I can make, I'm not reduce it, can make it quicker for someone to communicate, which is usually the biggest barrier for an augmented communicator to engage in a conversation. Shannon, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, they are doing there's a lot of pilot programs, small pilot programs that are starting to research AAC and AI. And then you have to remember all the devices, like your big companies like Prinky Romic and Tobii Dynavox and your Proloquotico and all of those apps that are already out there. So you can't just totally change their systems. You've got to go in it at a very strategic manner, but they are starting to incorporate it. It's just it's going to take time, and we've got to push because it needs to be a priority. But there are some programs and there's some small groups. But when you think about how they're developing these cars that are driving by themselves versus who's working on AAC, it's like Hawaii versus the whole continent of
Right, it's
Europe.
very different.
So it's
I'll also add another thing is in the moment array generations for an environment. So I'm going to go to the zoo and haven't been before. So can I preload some stuff and it's going to create me a zoo page or something like that. I've seen some things on that. And I've also seen some things where, when we do a grid, we'll do a, you know, 7 by 5 grid and we fill it up or whatever. But actually people have preferences where they want the squares or items to be. And there's some data they've been collecting on when people self-design their own grids and keyboards, and it's not what you would think it would be. And at first people don't like it. They want it to be like it was before, but then they do actually prefer their own. And it isn't even necessarily motor based. It's like there's other reasons people preferred different kinds of grids. So I'm not sure where that'll go either. So that we have like about 30 seconds, I think. So I'll summarize there. Our contact information is on this slide. If you're not able to see it, we'll be happy to send it out to you. And then we do have an AI generated image. This is 3 of our people at TTAP, and I put in there something like make a box of superheroes, AAC heroes from the University of Texas. And I came up with some things that are accurate. There's a Bevo Longhorn and a taco and a little communication device and a USB cord. But then there's some weird stuff too, like bottles of medicine and a laser beam. I mean, a laser gun. So I'm not sure what all of that is. So it would be a partial accurate and partial hallucination. Oh, and by the way, I think I'm supposed to be the one in the middle, and I am no way that skinny. So it wasn't accurate at all because I did put my picture in there. So
Yeah, and
we'll
I
leave.
haven't had long hair for 20 years.
I
So
know, right? And the picture did have short curly hair that I submitted, so that gives you an
we do
idea
like
of
the
how
Longhorn and the taco, though.
it's that 70% right there, kind of
Yeah.
a visual capture of it. And we're right at 3 o'clock, so I think we're supposed to stop, right, Jamie?
Yes, and we very much appreciate your time and your expertise and your willingness to share. We will post the recording of this webinar to our YouTube channel and also to the AT3 Community Forum. And of course, if you have any questions, please, Angela and Shannon have shared their contact information. And you can also reach out to me or to Ryan or Marty at the AT3 Center. We, again, thank you very much. It was wonderful. And we'll see you guys next month.
And there's one last question here before you cut off. It
Okay.
talked about, do we see AI assisting individuals with expanding the vocabulary? That technology they're already using in children's learning applications. And I don't see why that learning application can't go right into our AAC devices. So it's growing with a child or even an adult who's never had the opportunity to have the device. Likewise, that's that personalization. So the potential's there. It's just a matter of when it's going to come. Y'all have a great rest of your week and great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.